members in the submission. Thanks, Chairperson. This submission is perhaps the first thing is to correct that the submission is not for approval, is for noting. As it is indicated in the cover submission, it was a mistake that it was made for it to be for approval. It is a submission for members to note. So we are requesting the RSC to note the submission and the analysis of the submission by Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Municipality on regulatory financial report. This is a second submission that we are receiving from the Metropolitan. We had received it on the 11th of October after several interactions with the municipality to get the submission to be a complete submission. So in terms of the audit, the submission is not audited based on the NESA agreed upon procedure, but the municipality has indicated that they had conducted a statutory audit for the consolidated and the separate financials. And the separate financial is include the financial for electricity business. And we indicated that it will be advisable for the municipality to include in their audit the NESA agreed upon procedure. So in terms of the completeness, all the relevant section of the submission has been populated, which then enables the NESA team to be able to conduct all the analysis that is required. The analysis that was conducted, Chairperson, is the ratio analysis, which has been summarized on table 1. I think it's page 5 of the submission, and that summary table shows the trend analysis and the list of ratios that has been conducted, and it was out of members' advice or request that we include such table each time we do the submission. And then in terms of the performance on profitability, our analysis shows that the municipality profitability, the performance is in a declining trend or has declined for the 2020-21 financial year when we compare it to 2019-20 for all the return on assets, return on equity, net profit, and gross margin. And the major contributors for the decline in profitability is the increase in expenses such as depreciation and finance cost, and also the decline in its sales. And then the next ratio that was conducted is the liquidity ratio, which looks at the current assets and the current liability. Even this one, the municipality's performance is below the norm of 1, which indicates that the municipality will not be able to meet its short-term obligations when they are due. On leverage ratio, our analysis shows that the municipality is not heavily dependent on debt, which is good. However, when we look at the interest cover ratio, it shows that it is on negative, which shows that the municipality will not be able to meet its interest expense when they are due. And then on efficiency ratio, which is the last ratio that we conducted, the efficiency ratio has improved. However, the advice that we would like to give to the municipality is that they must improve it further to be within at least the 30 days to comply with the MFMA. We, on section 5, we also conduct a comparability analysis where we compared the performance of the metropolitans, all the metropolitans based on the RFRs and the deform information that we received. And what we had seen is that in terms of revenue improvement, only City of Tshwane, City Power, and Nelson Mandela has improved in terms of their revenues. and the rest showed the decline. And in terms of the inflation, in terms of the overall cost, eThekwini, Nelson Mandela, City of Tshwane, and City of Cape Town, their overall cost are above inflation. When we use the inflation of 4.6, but only Ekurhuleni and City Power, their expenditures are below inflation. And lastly, Chairperson, in terms of the profitability, the eThekwini, Ekurhuleni, and Nelson Mandela recorded a deficit, whereas City of Cape Town has recorded a surplus, but which is a decline when we compare it with the previous year. And then City Power recorded a surplus, which is an improvement. And then on the cost of supply, the cost of supply was received, but has been returned with the issues that the team has raised, and those issues are being considered by the municipality. We are therefore requesting the committee to note the submission and the analysis, and also to write a letter to inform the municipality about the outcome of the analysis. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ntakeni. I think, Ms. Hatting, if we can correct the agenda, it says the submission is for approval, and it is actually for noting if you look at what has been presented by the team. On that note, members, can I take questions or issues of clarity that you may have in relation to this particular submission from Ekurhuleni? Thank you, Ms. Masetti.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Mr. Ntakeni for the presentation. I do have a couple of questions for clarity, and I think that most of those questions relate to the usefulness and the and the reliability of this information when we consider the tariff for Ekurhuleni, and also when we consider the cost of supply study that it will revise and submit later on to the regulator. Now, I would like to start off with the issue of exemption of Ekurhuleni from submitting the cost allocation manual. As we know, cost allocation manuals are compulsory. So I wanted to understand, because I'm not sure maybe how it's done, because it seems now we are in this case it is replaced with the SCOIA, or Municipal Standard Chart of Accounts. So I wanted to check there, as it is compulsory, to what extent does it then cover our requirements insofar as costs and cost allocation, identification of cost accurately, and also making sure that we will be in a position to identify the over and under recovery, which are very important when we determine the tariff, so that we can be able to see if there will be issues of drawback. Now, how does this approach used by the Treasury ensure that it covers all of the regulatory requirements and the information that will be useful for the regulator for its purpose, especially with regards to the tariffs? If I can get an answer to that question. And then the second one relates to the fact that the RFRs that we are looking at today, sure, they are for 2020 until March 2021. They are 2 years late, and that surely should have been something of that should have been emphasized here in terms of its usefulness, because this information must correlate or must assist us in terms of the deforms. By May of this year, we should be looking at the tariffs. Now, if we're at this point still looking at the RFRs for 2020, I don't, especially with all of these profitability ratios and all of that, how is this going to assist? Because we can't be relying on outdated information, because I don't know what is the state of or the financial position of Ekurhuleni as of 2021, 2022 as well as 2022-23. We know that the 2022-23 is still coming up. I think the financial year end is March 31st, and they still have about 3 months thereafter. That is understood, but then there are sort of half-year reports that should be submitted so that at least we check progress as we go along. None of that has been stated here so that we can be able to indicate to the decision makers this delay that was encountered here and to what extent it will impact on NERSA's ability to monitor the financial situation and be able to make informed decisions during the tariffs and even for clawbacks, and also to make sure that we've got reliable information at our disposal as the regulator, but it seems we don't have that information if we are only looking at 2020 at this point in time. So that is a worrying situation, and I would like the team to at least tell us what measures have they put in place here, or what other information have they obtained to assist the regulator to work on the basis of the most updated information, especially because we do know that there are audited financials of Ekurhuleni for 2021-2022. Surely we must be we must at least obtain those and request additional information also that will cover 2022, even if the year end has not been reached. The other question, Chairperson, that I have, it relates to this high expenditure, especially the finance cost. We will know that it may become very difficult for the regulator to deal effectively with the increasing finance cost because of the methodology that we use in determining the tariffs for the municipalities. So how do we effectively deal with the issue of the increasing finance cost? And the submission here does not talk to that. It doesn't say how we can constrain the increasing finance cost by the municipality and even other municipalities. How do we make sure that we'll deal with this? Number one. Number two, how do we make sure that these high costs will not be recovered from the tariff that will be determined by June of this year? How do we make sure that such cost will not be the cost that will actually be recovered through the tariffs? So that is the second thing, and it seems also when we talk about some strategies on how to improve the financial position of this municipality, we're saying that they must increase the sales. I don't know how practical it is in the capacity constraints in terms of the electricity supply in the first place. So I don't know also about its what we call the maximum notifiable demand, or whatever we call it. But what it means is that is the maximum demand that it will submit to Eskom in terms of in terms of its demand and requirements for the electricity supply, the bulk supply. So now, if we are faced with the capacity constraints here, how would it be in a position to increase the sales here, especially given the load shedding? So how do you increase the sales? There's load shedding, they won't have capacity, they won't have more electricity to can be able to deal with the situation here. So it seems to me that the proposal by the team, at least from NERSA, because it will be NERSA's report. So if NERSA seems to be out of sync with the reality here, when we're actually faced with load shedding, how do you increase the sales? And also understanding the capacity constraints of the grid. How practical is that proposal? The last thing, Chairperson, the last thing was just to emphasize on the issue of monitoring and reducing the finance, the increasing finance cost, but also, not only that, also depreciation. The depreciation is high here. So I haven't heard Mr. Ntakeni talking to that high depreciation, the cause of it, and how to make sure at least it is constrained to the extent that it will have an effect in terms of the overall cost that must be recovered through a tariff, so that we can relieve the ratepayers of Ekurhuleni municipality. I would like to stop here, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Masetti. Mr. Mkhize.
Yes, Chairperson, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to Mr. Ntakeni for the presentation. If we may just please be consistent when it comes to the issue of the time, because there's a time for the presentation where matters are taken as read, and also the time from our side to comment, ask questions, or ask or provide guidance. I think that will help. And taking matters as read and commenting also relate to the issues. I would just like to mention two matters from my side. One is, does it mean that we're no longer going to get this via M-score? We're going to follow this process all the way? Just would like to get clarity on that. And two, I would like to understand if there's any need for us to realign to remove the admin work that is associated with applying for and granting extensions. That is when I consider 5.1.4, that paragraph. I can just get clarity on that. And then I find it a bit difficult when I go to 5.4.7.1 as to what are we actually saying that may be followed up and addressed using the SMART principle. For example, if we're talking of operating efficiency, what actually do we mean by that? And what do we mean by revenue from sales? Are residents actually paying? What is the root cause? I think whenever we're providing some conclusion, we need to also look at the root causes so that we can have next steps that seek to address that problem very clearly outlined. Because you can talk of sales as coming from energy out and then the rents out of that. But you may have a situation where there's theft, there's this, which is actually at the end of the day will be will not help. At the end of the day, there are bad debts that are associated with that. So yeah, that is all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. And from me, Mr. Ntakeni, it's the issue of the municipality's non-compliance with the PFMA, particularly the requirements to pay creditors within 30 days. And we are saying that it takes the municipality about 3 months to pay their creditors. And as we know, some of these creditors are service providers. Amongst them, some may be those that are providing a service in relation to the municipality's provision of the electricity service. And we are saying there is just non-compliance, and I do not see what are we saying needs to be done by the municipality in relation to that particular non-compliance with PFMA as NESA, because at the end of it, if there is amongst those creditors a service provider providing a service to the municipality for the provision of electricity, the customers are the ones that are going to really suffer if the service provider decides not to continue with their service with the municipality. So I just wanted to get clarity in terms of what are we saying or recommending in relation to that particular non-compliance by the municipality with statutory requirements that are contained in the PFMA. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, members, for the question. We will answer the question assisted by the team, Ms. Masike and Rangararuve. In terms of the exemption on CAM, it is true that the regulator had exempted when we started with the MSCOA process. The National Treasury indicated that the issues around how costs are allocated, identification of the cost centers, they will develop a document that deals with that, that will cover the requirements of the CAM. And that document was submitted, and it has sufficiently dealt with the requirements that NES are required in terms of cost allocation manual. What we can do from our side is to ensure that that document is also it accompanies the submission to show how in detail the issue of cost allocation manual was addressed by National Treasury cost allocation manual. And then on the issue of the timing of the information, the information is for the financial year 2020-21. We're comparing it to the information for 2019. So the 2020-21 information is the most recent available information that has been received and analyzed, and we are now waiting for the 2021-22 information. So it is the most recent information that we have received, and it is not. We had not requested municipality not to submit their deform. In terms of the tariffing, because the information was received late, as I indicated, there was to and fro between us and the municipality to get the information completed. But there is a better version, a more detailed version, which is the D4, which the municipality has submitted, and that information was used during the tariff approval process. So this information is more to show members, because with the tariff setting process, we don't go into the details as we do with the RFRs, because the RFRs give us more detailed information to be able to do accounting ratios. So the accounting ratios were not done with the deform information that was submitted. And then in terms of the finance cost, how do we deal with the constraints around it, and how do we ensure that they are not part of the tariff? So it is true that the finance costs are high, and the municipality indicated that it is because they have acquired PPEs, property, plant, and equipment. So which means they went on borrowing to acquire the assets. So how do we deal with it to ensure that it does not go into the tariff setting? These are the costs that are part of the cost that are acceptable to run the electricity business. Municipality do require those assets, and those are the assets. And if you can also see the value of the assets has went up. Those are electricity related assets. So the analysis shows that the cost can be included as part of the cost that run the electricity business, and therefore they will find their ways in the tariff. And then the issue of the depreciation is the same issue with the finance cost. Depreciation is an allowed line items in terms of the line items that are allowed for activities electricity business. So they will also find their way in the tariff. And then the difficult question around the issue of how do we expect municipality to increase their sales during the load shedding. It is really difficult, we must admit, but the expectation is that municipality, if they are not able to increase their sales due to the constraints around the load shedding, then the corresponding costs should also be minimized. Therefore, the issue of deficit should not be realized, because if they are not generating or if they're not selling more electricity, even the cost should also be managed so that they realize a profit, not a deficit. And then on the issue of time, thanks, Mr. Mkhize, we'll ensure that next time when we present, we note that the submission is read. And then this does not substitute the M-score submission. This submission is in line with the M-score, but this is a manual submission of it. The template complies with the M-score. And then the revenue is the revenue from sale of electricity. In terms of what the root cause of decline in the revenue, we will have to check with we had not checked what could be the underlying cause in the declining, the reason for decline in revenue is something that we can check with the licensee. And then on MFMA compliance, it is indeed something that we are saying municipalities must ensure that the days that they take to pay their creditors complies with the MFMA. In terms of how they should do it, we had not indicated that, but we expect that municipality in their operation, they will ensure that when they process their invoice, they don't stay long with their invoices from their creditors. They process them within the 30 days in line with the MFMA. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ntakeni. Members, Ms. Masita, so your hand was up. I don't know if you had a follow-up question in terms of the responses given or covered.
Yes, Chairperson, if I may, and this is meant for the decision making. For instance, if the response does not provide an alternative, for instance, in terms of what the municipality should do, we can't approve a submission, or at least even for noting, because it will be a substantive decision by the regulator, where a regulator says to the municipality, it must increase its sales. Yet we also acknowledge the practicality of increasing the sales, as I have indicated. So if there is no alternative option there, I will find it difficult to support that kind of a recommendation, which is in the submission. So it is those kind of things that that we need to take care of before we get to the decision making. And then the second thing, Chairperson, I am very much aware of the significance of this report, and it must never be underestimated. It is only compromised by the fact that the methodology we use for the tariff for the municipality is not one that looks at the cost. It is one that looks at the benchmarking and the average. But that does not mean that the regulator must fail in its duty to look at costs that are inefficient to the extent that those costs will make it to the tariff of the municipality. So those things are very important. So hence I questioned two things: the high depreciation cost as well as the finance cost. And I'm asking, since we observe this in the analysis, what do we do? What can we do also to make sure that these don't find their way in the tariff that we're going to be looking at? And it's even worse, Chairperson. We don't know what happened in 2021. It may well be that maybe the municipality tried to improve on this cost in the year 2021 and year 2022, of which information we don't have in front of us. And that question about the 2-year gap of information. And now we're going to be deciding going forward on information that is 2 years late. That on its own, for the regulator, it doesn't look good. And I'm saying the team should make an effort to obtain that information, because finances have been audited and were submitted for 2021, 2022. We should by now be looking at that. It can't be that, no, we're still looking at this, which is 2020, which is very old. So there must also be that recommendation from my side, Chairperson, so that the team must be quick in obtaining that information and analyze that information, so that by the time we go to the tariff period review for this municipality, at least we know what is the state of its finances and be able to scrutinize that tariff properly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member. I think on that note, then we will move on to the recommendations. But before we do, Mr. Ntakeni, please, I hope you have noted the points raised by members, which relates to deform information, finance cost, depreciation, increase in sales during load shedding, compliance with MSCOA, the decline in revenue that needs to be checked with the licensee, and as well as the need to ensure that the inefficient costs are not pushed through the tariff application, and the fact that we need updated information before the tariff of this particular metro is considered, because what we have before us, it's information that is really a bit a year or so behind. So if we can have that, and I think in the communication to be written to the municipality, the information or issues that have been raised by members now, if they can also be added. So on that note, members, in addition to some of the points that have been indicated that we still need to get the information from the licensee, may I recommend that we then look at the recommendations that are on page 18, paragraph 15, which are the REC is requested to note the submission of the RFRs by Ekurhuleni Metro, and to note NESA's evaluation of the